Rogers was the most popular American sculptor of the late 19th century. He sold over 80,000 small plasters in the course of a 30-year career to Americans all across the country. And his achievement is kind of a dual achievement because he was not only a critically acclaimed fine artist, he was a member of the National Academy of Design, he won medals at World's Fairs, all the usual honors of his day. He was also an amazingly popular artist, and he marketed his works in ways that no artist had ever done before, by advertising in the periodicals of the day, sending out sales catalogs so that you could get his sculptures by mail order, and was an incredible success in both of those aspects. And that's something we want to emphasize in this exhibition, John Rogers' American Stories. Well, John Rogers makes his fame during the 1860s as a sculptor of Civil War subjects. And he bursts onto the scene in New York with this small sculpture called the Slave Auction from actually 1859. And what we see here is a slave family about to be divided at auction. On the left is the father, who looks defiant with his arms folded. On the right is the mother, who's desperately clinging to her child.
Actually, this is a wonderful place to start the exhibition. It's also at the very start of a book that I just had the privilege of preparing for the Historical Society that will be published next spring, called The History of the Civil War in 50 Objects from the New York Historical Society, and this is one of the earliest pieces. I think he got the idea for this from the New York Tribune's extensive coverage of that mass slave auction. 400 human beings sold, along with cattle, which is exactly what it says on the auctioneer's podium.
Right there on the podium.
So it was a gruesome story. The Tribune played it in a big way for its anti-slavery audience, and I think this is, in a way, an artistic reaction. And the great feature is the children. We don't know where they're going to be destined. They may not even stay with the mother.
Exactly.
It may be total separation. It's very powerful.
And they're a bit hidden from our view, just like their future. We don't know what will happen.
I mean, I find one of the most consistent motifs in Civil War art is a provision of reassurance to people at home that if their son, brother, husband were wounded, they would be cared for by someone in this remote territory that they found themselves in. And I think this piece reflects that, in this case interracially, so it makes a very powerful statement.
Yeah, I think this is the perfect embodiment of that idea of insurance. Wounded Scout, A Friend in the Swamp, shows us a Union soldier who has gone behind enemy lines to scout ahead. He's been injured. You can see he has a tourniquet on his arm. The veins are bulging, and he's in great danger. And he's being rescued and helped, just as you were saying, by an escaped slave.
In a way, the soldier is helping the contraband too, because by the fact that they are gripping each other, that man is legally free under the terms of the Emancipation Proclamation. The proclamation relies on the army to effect the promise of the document. And here is this near helpless person being rescued, but in return for this act of generosity, this man is going to be free.
This is Returned Volunteer, How the Fort Was Taken. And what we see here is a soldier down here at the right who is telling the story, he's recounting the story of a battle that he fought. And you can see down here he's created a little mock battlefield with the tools he's found in the blacksmith shop, in the shop of this man that he is visiting.
And I don't know, I think the little girl, I've always thought the little girl is the soldier's daughter.
Oh.
And she's bonded with her grandfather during his absence. And he's tackling the story now, how these people will live together. What job will this soldier get in the civilian world? Will he displace the elderly blacksmith? A lot of things going on here.
Taking the oath and drawing rations is considered by many to be his masterpiece. And I think it is not only technically, but in the way that he approaches this very difficult subject.
Reconstruction was such a challenge to Americans, not only in the North, to readjust to a new citizenry, a biracial society, but in the South, obviously, as they try to reclaim the shattered society that they once had without slavery. And I think Rogers approached it in many different interesting ways. We see both of those approaches in these two different groups. Here, a Union soldier, very respectful, not the carpetbagger of myth, administers a loyalty oath to a Southern woman as her child looks on. They're clearly the defeated, subjugated class here, and in fact, we see a young African-American boy watching perhaps his former owner start her new life, and his face is filled with expectation about the new order. So after Lincoln's death, Stanton suggested that their first councils of war be immortalized, and then the result was this group. Robert Lincoln, Lincoln's sole surviving son, thought this was the best sculpted likeness of his father that was ever created anywhere.
Yeah, it's a very high compliment considering how many likenesses were created of Lincoln during this time and in the years following. And Rogers took his work as a portraitist very seriously, and that's something that I think goes a little bit unsung. He visited both Grant and Stanton to take measurements, to get to know them, to get to know their faces, and of course he worked from photographs for Lincoln. One of the things I think is so remarkable about this group is this comes after the war, and this is a period when people are starting to process the war and think about what it means to them, and there are lots of plans for memorials. And I like to think about this as sort of a memorial in miniature that you can have in your own home.
Usually in images that show Lincoln in the center of a group, all eyes are on Lincoln. But I think in this way, Grant is looking at his immediate superior, the Secretary of War. Stanton is sort of contemplating his glasses. It's almost as if Lincoln has emerged as such a mythic figure. He's not in the same category as those who are attending him. Yeah, and I think what might have otherwise not worked with another president, a living president, works well with the knowledge that Lincoln is destined to be martyred for the cause that all three of these people are fighting for.